I know that we're all enjoying the conversation, and if you guys, we do have a little bit of a program, I'm sorry. I can sense your disappointment already. I am not Mayor Riley. I am Kevin Lehner, the city administrator, and I wanted to pass on that Mayor Riley wanted to know that he had planned to be here, but he had an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C., and interface with all the agencies that we are currently attempting to get money from for our big $300 million water project. And so he likes you guys, but not $300 million worth. So he does apologize for not being able to attend. And I just had to point out that he did invite his brother to the breakfast that he's not attending. So I don't know what happened in their childhood, but he did. Before we get started, I want to just, again, thank you. Thank you for coming here to the breakfast. We appreciate you coming to hear about our great city of Waukesha. And I want to take a moment to recognize some of the elected officials here that have joined us. Representative Scott Allen is here. Thank you, Scott. We have Waukesha County Supervisors Larry Nelson and Dwayne Paulson. And from the office of U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin, Vanessa Lamas is here. City Attorney Brian Running, who was sworn in for another term last night. We have former mayors Paul Varakis and Larry Nelson again. And we have our aldermen Kathleen Cummings, Dean Lemke, Aaron Perry, and Joe Piper that I saw came in. And also Sheriff Eric Severson is here, so appreciate you attending. I wanted to also, again, thank our venue. They have been our hosts since the beginning, and they do a wonderful job. Thank you all very much for the wonderful breakfast and the service that you provide to us every day, so thank you very much. We have a really good program with lots of good speakers, so I'm going to keep this short. The one thing that I want to plug today is that we do have an open house tomorrow night at 6 p.m. about Waukesha City Hall. And so we have been working for several months, actually several years, on making plans to figure out what we're going to do with Waukesha City Hall and whether we're going to build a new facility or revamp the one that we currently have. And so if you have the opportunity, I would greatly encourage you to attend our workshop tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. I would really, really appreciate that effort. The genesis of this program is that, we were seeing the news reports and hearing about the thing that everybody calls the opioid crisis. And it's in the news a lot. There has been some bills passed recently at the state level, at the national level, to deal with this issue. And, it came to our mind that this is really an issue that the city of Waukesha deals with every single day. And by nature of my position, I get the police reports daily, and there's not a week that goes by in the city of Waukesha where we don't get a report of an overdose. And it's quite often that those overdoses are saved by our people. By our incredible police department and our fire department. And it was pretty, if you think about it, it's pretty, I don't know if it's shocking, but it's pretty telling that a city that has been consistently ranked one of the safest cities in Wisconsin and has one of the lowest crime rates in the state is impacted so greatly by this crisis. And so the idea was to kind of talk about the life cycle of this and talk about how we've responded and how our different agencies and social service agencies and stuff have responded to this issue, and really give you a touch point just to tell you how it impacts our city and how we're responding to that. And so we have a great panel, and I'm going to introduce them all first, and then they'll come up and speak as their turn is up. The first speaker is going to be Police Chief Russ Jack. He has been the chief for 9 years and has been 29 years at the Waukesha Police Department. And he's also serves over the city that is one of the safest in the state and the nation. We're #1 in the state and 34th in the nation most recently. We also have Waukesha Fire Chief Steve Howard, who has been a firefighter EMT for 32 years and is a lifelong resident of Waukesha, a proud graduate of Waukesha North, for all you Northsiders out there. He is also an adjunct instructor of fire science at WCTC. And we have John Kettler, who is the Human Services Supervisor at Waukesha County Department of Health and Human Services. And he's worked in residential research and outpatient settings, providing mental health, co-occurring and substance use services at a variety of agencies since 1991. In addition to his clinical work, John is also involved in the Wisconsin STAR QI program, crime intervention trainings, independent consulting work, Waukesha County Heroin and Other Illicit Drugs Task Force, treatment courts, peer specialist, and the designated coroner for the intoxicated driver program in Waukesha County. And last but not least, we have Patrick Riley, who is a licensed substance abuse counselor by the state of Wisconsin, nationally certified recovery coach, now has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. And Patrick has been in abstinence-based recovery from drugs and alcohol since May 15th of 2009. So please welcome our first speaker, Chief Jack.
As he pulled it up, though, a big thank you to Sally and most of the workers, Sally Caldwell, and I'm sure Rebecca had a big hand in putting this group together. Because I've been chief for a while now, and I've been asked many times as chief, hey chief, how are you going to solve this opioid epidemic? And I paused for a minute so I don't say anything too much like a smart aleck or anything, but I can't solve this as the chief of police. They did an excellent job today putting together at least a small panel of players that are involved in mitigating the opioid epidemic. Can we solve it? Probably not. There's a lot of people that are involved in mitigating the harmful effects, including death, from the opioid epidemic. You could probably have a group of 10 people up here, but we only have about 50 minutes, so you kept the group fairly small. But you could put a good eclectic mix of people who are working on the problem, and we are working on it greatly. Thank you. So my job today is we should only have about 10 to 15 minutes, so I'm going to go through these slides fairly fast. There's a lot of people in here with a lot of different knowledge. There's people in here that know exactly what this looks like, and some people have no idea, have never seen heroin or anything else. So just from an education standpoint, I'm going to try to give a little bit of education into the opioid epidemic. I want to start by just talking about how big the problem is. And everybody in here is on social media, the newspaper, all the different things. It's not a secret this is a huge crisis. But I wanted to put it in perspective just how bad this actually is here. And up here you see the city of Waukesha drug overdose investigations. And you can see the drastic increase from 2010 to 2017. And the numbers are up there. It looks even worse when you put it on a graph. We are not getting better. It's not for lack of effort. On my part as the police chief, on my department, the sheriff, obviously a big partner with us in the law enforcement aspect, the fire department, everybody else. This problem is being worked on by a lot of different areas from the state level, the federal, the local level, and we're still not getting better. They're getting a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of time, and I consider the police department, I consider the sheriff, we're joint partners of this. We're one small piece of the puzzle for this, to solve this epidemic. And I just want to start out today with just how bad actually things are and what significant impact this has on our community and communities around the area and across the whole United States. And it's not a matter, some people used to think, well, that's just a drug dealer down in the core of Milwaukee. That's not. It's everywhere. The city of Waukesha, it's everywhere in every city across our country. Those numbers didn't come out too well on there. I hope you can see them. This is a Wisconsin deaths. And you can see the drastic increase also from 2010 all the way, only have numbers to 2016. 827 people. That's a lot. I just wanted to put it in perspective of how bad this problem actually is. Again, when you look at the graph format, you see visually just how much our country, our people, our brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, parents, kids are suffering from this crisis and dying from this crisis. Let's talk a little bit about the heroin spiral here. Yeah, I'm sure everybody's heard that term gateway drug. It doesn't mean that everybody who's using marijuana is going to end up using heroin later on. That's not true. But a lot is true. A lot of people do. But even more so is the prescription medication. And people always ask me as the chief, why do they go to heroin? That's illegal. Because it's cheap. It's more accessible, it's cheaper, and they get a better high in the quote they have, and from quoting other people. Most of the groups that use this, a lot of people that we know, they carry the Narcan with them. And Chief Howard, I know Patrick's going to talk also, and probably John, about the Narcan. So I won't talk too much about that. But if it wasn't for Narcan, you'll see the statistics later on the presentation, just how bad, way worse, those statistics would be if we didn't have Narcan. And they'll explain that later on. What is heroin? It's highly, highly addictive. And I have two sons, both are, one's out of college and one's in college. And they've heard the speech for the last 15 years. I didn't start the speeches when they were 20. Us as parents need to start those speeches when they're 6, talking about the drug use, talking about how addictive it is. In its purest form, heroin is a fine white powder. Part of the slide they put together for today, you're going to see what heroin looks like. And we want you, because a lot of people in here that have never seen it, maybe saw a picture somewhere on the internet, but have never actually seen it. So I want to do just a little bit of that. There's a lot of names up here that people on the street use it, but usually white powder is actually the purest form, but it doesn't look like that generally on the street at all. The problem with all these additives in there is there's no idea how strong it is. We'll have a rash of overdose calls. It's because whoever's making that, the dealer, at one time they made it 92% pure heroin. Guess what happens when you're used to 15% heroin pure and 85% of some other non-lethal chemical called the cutting heroin, and all of a sudden now it's 92% pure. People die like crazy, and we notice that. I asked my drug unit, why would somebody do that? Why would a drug dealer kill their clients, intentionally try to kill people? And they actually explained it to me, and it made sense as their business model, we'll call it. It's a legal business model, but it's a business model. Their idea was to get them hooked on 92% pure heroin, and then cut it back down to 10 to 15%. Guess what? Then they have to buy 5 times more to get that same level of feeling that they had before. Again, it's their business model, not a good model. More than 75% of those who try heroin once will use it again. Once. That's what I emphasize to my kids. I know I'm sure you guys all talk to your kids also, or your relatives. One time, I would think it's probably higher, but statistics that I have are 75% will continue to use it. They can't use it just once. Builds up a tolerance to it. To show you what it looks like up here on the screen, this is the most common way we see it on the street. It's a blown up picture here. Again, in its purest form, it's white powder. It obviously doesn't look like that by the time the police department sees it. A lot of people have asked me in the past, is this a medical problem? And of course, Chief Howard here today is going to be talking about the medical side of it. And it's not just a medical problem. There's a lot of different views. Even our presenters today are going to have different views on how do we solve this problem? How do we at least mitigate the problem? But keep in mind that person who's taken the heroin got it unlawfully, and as police chief in the police department, don't we have a responsibility to stop illegal activity in our city? People bringing drugs to our city. People infecting our community with drugs. I have a responsibility to stop that from happening, stop the violence. I also want to talk just a little bit today about, because everybody's got kids, relatives, parents, everything else. You may or may not have seen this, or what the people have asked me for, what to look for in case one of my relatives might be abusing heroin or using heroin. And so it could be syringes, tourniquets, grinders, all different things. I got a visualization here in just a minute of what to look for, but also evidence of Narcan. We just put together a few things that you may or may not see of paraphernalia from somebody that is using heroin. You may see this in your own home. It may be your son, your daughter, your spouse. You don't know for sure. This is not this is some junkie in the tent at north of Milwaukee's problem. This is all of our problem. That's what common people thought. That's so not true. Where to look? Basically everywhere. Anywhere that one of these items could be concealed, that's where you need to look. Since my kids aren't in here, I searched their bedrooms many times as they grew up. Don't tell them, one's a cop now. He probably gave me some Fourth Amendment violation of legal search and seizure, but now that he knows actually what I was doing. But I did, as a parent. I felt that was my responsibility to search their rooms, to search the areas that they could be concealing, those items they saw on the screen, to see if my kids were. No, I never found anything, fortunately. And no, I never searched my spouse's stuff. I'm smarter than that. I've been married 26 years. But maybe I should have. Not that she's doing it. No, hey, now you laugh at that. No. My point is that it can happen to anybody. It can happen to our spouse. It can happen to our kids, to our parents, our uncles and aunts. There's probably a lot of people in this room here that somewhere in their family, somebody is addicted to heroin. What can you do to a citizen? This is what I really want to emphasize. If you think somebody's abusing prescription medication or using an illegal substance, you need to contact us. There's many times in my career, and officers tell me still today, that they get calls from a concerned parent, and they're telling us about their son or their daughter. They're using heroin. They're abusing prescription. At first thought as a parent, you go, wow, how can you turn your kid in? But then I thought, as a parent and as a cop, what a nice job turning your kid in. Because the best help, of course, is to volunteer for that help, to get treatment. But I guess forced help from the courts is better than no help at all. We only have a short period of time, that's all I have time for today, but if somebody has a pending question on your mind, I'll take it now, because I do have a retirement ceremony at 9 o'clock, so I can't stay much longer. But if somebody has a pressing question that you would have asked me later, I'd be happy to take that now. Not the city attorney, though.
He wants to ask you about that search.
He's going to tell me, yes, Chief, that wasn't a legal search. Yes, sir.
Are your slides or your presentation available that we can take to our employees?
I can, why don't you send me an email after?
Okay.
And, yeah, they can. I'll figure out how to get that slide to you. Where's Sally? Sally? There you go. We discussed it at our planning meeting. What was the plan to get the slides to everybody?
At the end of the presentation, there'll be a slide with contact information with his email address, and you can contact him directly.
Okay.
That's what it was. And if you ever forget what email address, it is on the city website under the police department. Most chiefs think I'm crazy putting my own email on there, but it is my own email address. You can send me an email anytime about anything. I work for you. And I'll turn it over to Chief Howard for his presentation.
Thank you, Russ, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Obviously, the fire department is impacted just like the community is by the opioid crisis and response. As Chief Jack had referred to, a big part of our involvement is the medical emergency. And unfortunately, we're being called at the point when someone is in crisis, at the point that they've gotten to in their addiction where they have overdosed. Again, this is a severe life-threatening emergency. The biggest impact from taking the opioids, and it's not only heroin, it's fentanyl, it's a combination of prescriptions, it's a combination of the things that are additionally in there, is that it starts to impact the person's ability to breathe. It is a very strong respiratory depressant. So typically when we're getting called is when someone finds someone and they are unconscious, they have that decreased level of consciousness, they have respiratory distress or are not breathing, possibly into cardiac arrest, and maybe some of the other side effects of the unknowns that were put into the drug that they took when it was cut. Again, it is a severe life-threatening emergency that we respond to like all medical emergencies in the community. Our treatment strategy is pretty straightforward, especially when we deal with someone, whether it's from natural causes or from an overdose, is that we treat the cardiac arrest first, start to treat that. If they're not in cardiac arrest, we want to secure an airway, and then we look to administering when we have those signs and symptoms that we talked about before, that decreased respiratory or respiratory arrest. We have the pinpoint pupils, and we have that unconsciousness or decreased level of consciousness. That's signs for us to administer what's commonly known as Narcan. Again, Narcan is a drug that's gotten a lot of publicity or press, but is not a new drug. It was developed in the 1960s. It was approved by the FDA in the early 70s. And as a fire department, we've carried Naloxone or Narcan since 1975 as we established a paramedic program. Our original reason for carrying it was twofold. One was obviously to treat overdoses, but the main reason we started carrying it back in 1975 is it gave us a tool to counteract the narcotics that we can administer for pain relief. We routinely administer morphine, fentanyl, and we have a tool to counteract those drugs. Typically, what we used to see was that occasionally we would use Narcan, and it was normally either a suicide attempt where someone took drugs and we had a tool to counteract that, or it was an accidental overdose. Someone got their pills confused, took too much of their pain medicine instead of blood pressure medicine, and we had an overdose. Again, Naloxone or Narcan is in the press a lot. A lot of people don't quite understand how it works. My goal here is not to give a medical class, but just to give you a little idea of how the drug works. It doesn't magically remove the narcotic from the bloodstream or from the system. What Narcan is it actually is a cousin to morphine, and the body likes the Narcan more than it does the narcotic. So the receptors that uptake the drug like the Narcan better. So what happens is once we introduce the Narcan to the bloodstream, and we have options of how to get that into a person's system, the drug has a great affinity for those receptors that knocks the narcotic off, which stops the respiratory depression, all the things that the drug's doing, so that it almost seems like it's a miracle drug. I guess in some ways it actually is a miracle drug. It's not a cure-all. It has its limits. A person can also get to a point where even if we introduce the Narcan, the respiratory distress has gotten to a point or the cardiac arrest has gotten to a point that the body cannot recover. But it is an excellent tool that we've used successfully for many years, and now it is available more into the community for families, friends, first responders, our partners in law enforcement have the ability to administer it before we get on scene when the situation dictates. The other thing that we're running into is that the stronger synthetic opioids that are out in the market now, I should say market, it's not really the market, but the legal market, are causing us to need more and more to counteract those effects. What this means to our community, and we don't specifically currently track overdoses to narcotics. But one of our best tools that we have is we can look at how often we've administered Narcan. And you can see the chart that we have up here going from 2011 to 2017 is the number of doses that we've administered in the city of Waukesha, in the community. And you can see that it's accelerating and trending upwards, some flat spots, but it doesn't tell the whole story. One of the things that we know now is back, say, in 2011, there wasn't a lot of Narcan available out in the community. People who are users were not provided with Narcan at that time, so really the only option was to call the fire department when someone was having a very negative effect from the drugs that they took. We see now that we're still in 2017, certainly increasing, but we also know now that a lot of times when we're getting called, it's after a bystander has administered Narcan and they weren't able to successfully revive the person. So we may look at it and start to say, well, it's not accelerating as much as the graph that Chief Jack presented, but we know that the problem is still out there in the community. One of the things we did is we took this data, and oh, by the way, the pictures on the bottom are actually the Narcan presentation that we carry, the little kit. Again, we can either introduce it into the body intranasally, which is that spray, that mist form. For us, we prefer with our paramedics to use IV access and introduce it directly into the bloodstream. That allows some advantages to us because we can administer it in a more precise manner and control the amount of Narcan that we're administering. This map that I have, and I apologize, I know that it doesn't look really good up here, but there's also copies on all the tables and also has the data. Shows where we've administered Narcan in the community. And one of the things that we did when we were preparing for this was we wanted to take a look at the map. And the map actually kind of showed us what instinctively we know. That there's no area of the community that's immune from this. This is affecting all areas. You can see the brighter the red colors are a little more intense, so it means we've delivered more doses in that geographical area. But as you can see, the entire community is covered. We know that this is not just the bad neighborhood. It's not just that type of person. It is affecting all areas of the community. A lot of times when we interact with people, they may have had a good stable job, good relationships, and they have declined to the point where the drug has taken over their life and they may not be in the best situation or are not in the best situations. But there's no area that's immune to this in our community, and our map of service shows that. Again, Narcan used to be one of those drugs that we would deliver a few times a year. When I first started on the department, it was very noteworthy when we would use Narcan. I can remember the first time as an EMT, seeing our paramedics deliver it. And it was a rare thing. It was something that our quality assurance people would bring up as a noteworthy call. And unfortunately, it has become an everyday, I don't want to say everyday event, but a very frequent event for us to use Narcan. We have gotten to the point, it's not that we're not compassionate or caring, but we've gotten to the point where it is just another part of the routine of our day of providing EMS service to the community. So the big question that we were given is, what is the fire department doing to address this problem? And again, as Chief Jack referred to, we can't solve the problem. We have a role. We have a role of dealing with that acute overdose and trying to get the person stabilized, taken to a hospital for more definitive treatment that hopefully leads to treatment for the underlying addiction, rehabilitation. But our piece is really just getting that unconscious person, that person that's in cardiac arrest, hopefully converting that problem, getting them breathing, getting them to the hospital, and hopefully other programs can lead these people to recovery. Currently, the fire department has 5 ALS units in service. We are very well equipped to deal with the problem, again, the acute problem. The EMS providers, I hate to say it, but we've become very good at this. And that's not out of bragging, it's just a reality that this is a routine call for us. But when I say that, it doesn't mean that we don't care. One of our big goals is to treat everyone in the community, but especially in these calls, that we want to treat people with dignity and compassion. And hopefully that this is the bottom for them and they can start to move down the road to recovery. Our firefighters who, by necessity, start to become kind of jaded by what we see in the community are still very compassionate. In talking to some of our paramedics and EMTs preparing for this, some of the stories that they've related to me, it really kind of hit home. We've gotten to the point where, again, not caring, not that we're not caring, but just a routine call doesn't really affect us as much. But we see the impact that it has on children. We get the calls where the parent, the caregiver is overdosed and the child calls 911 and we respond. We've responded to people who have just come out of treatment, who have just come out of our incarceration, had every intent to live a sober life, but they couldn't overcome it and they're in tears, and we've been called to help treat them. We see the underlying effects that it has on families, the broken relationships, occasionally the child abuse, the lack of medical care, because all their resources, all their efforts are going towards the addiction and not providing for their families. So again, we try to find a role in this where we can treat the acute problem, treat people with dignity and compassion, and hopefully be part of that step that leads people to recovery. The other thing that we are doing is we are expanding and looking at ways that we can partner with Waukesha County Social Services, Mental Health, to provide better data. Again, right now, all I can show you is the Narcan report. We can refine that a little bit. But we're looking at being able to provide better data on the overdoses that we treat and see in the community, so hopefully that leads to better outcomes and a better quality of life in the community. And with that, I will pass it on to John.
Along with the PowerPoint queued up, let me just stop and thank Mayor Riley, Rebecca, and Sally for putting this together and for inviting me to be a part of this. First, let me start and say that there's only one of me out here. Rebecca Luchai, the last one, was not able to join us this morning. So slides 1 through 4 and 15 through 20 I'll be identifying as Rebecca. Rebecca is our criminal justice collaborating council coordinator at Health and Human Services and administers the grants that are funded the drug court program. And that is what I want to speak about primarily today. My name is John Kepler. I work with Waukesha County Health and Human Services in the Clinical Services Division. We do substance use and mental health. I supervise the integrated behavioral health team. So working with therapists, the outpatient clinic, and substance use activities on the inpatient hospital. So we're seeing quite a lot of this, and I'm happy to be able to talk about what we're doing today and what we're seeing. We've got a number of things that we're working with. The Heroin Task Force that I want to mention is a collective impact model that is working. It's a public-private partnership that is working with a lot of different agencies, a lot of offices in the county, as well as a lot of private agencies and citizens as well, to have a collective impact across a wide range of areas that are all affected by the opioid issue. With law enforcement, drug-affected infants, the workplace, treatment, prevention, harm reduction, all have working pillars collectively to have an impact on this. I also work with the PDO project for the county, and I'll just mention that because the project is doing outreach to people who have overdosed on opiates. And I was currently doing naloxone trainings and administration trainings and opioid overdose prevention education for various groups. We're targeting users, family and friends of users, service providers, and first responders. So we are able to bring those into businesses, we're able to bring those into communities, and we've thankfully been able to train over 1,700 people so far and administer, distributed approximately 1,700 doses of Naloxone in Waukesha County. So that's something we're very proud of. And I can talk a little more about that with anyone specifically afterwards. But what I'd like to talk about today is our drug treatment program. Because we have quite a problem with opiates and drugs here in the county, but I do want to bring some hope. Okay? There are some solutions and there are some things that are working very well, and we want to have that be a part of what we're doing today. So we wanted to talk a little bit about our drug treatment program. And I'll just go off script here for the moment. The drug treatment program is grant funded through several grants we received at the federal level. We're grateful for those. It's in its 6th year. The idea is a partnership among multiple agencies in the court process. It is high accountability for the people who are to be enrolled in the drug court. It's not just for drug charges. It is for additional charges related to drug use. Often it's not simply possession that would bring someone into the program. It is that charge related to trying to get one for drugs, those kinds of things as well. Violent offenders are not accepted at this time in the program. It is a sought-after program, I would say. There's a waiting list to get in. Right now, we're currently serving 52 people with the program. We just recently were able to increase our capacity to come up to 60. And we're grateful for some additional funding we were able to get from SAMHSA to do that. As I said, it is high accountability, and here we go, thanks, Tim. It is high accountability. This program is a minimum of 1 year for anybody who's enrolled. And it's very intensive. Okay. So I will, we have a lot of slides, I'm going to go through them kind of quickly. And forgive me if I just mentioned anything that was here, but this is a multidisciplinary team. It is close to judicial supervision and high accountability, as I mentioned. That is really needed in early recovery, particularly with this target group. There's community supervision, mandatory random drug testing. They get tested multiple times. We don't know when. Have to call every single morning to find out if they need to come in. They're assigned a color. You are purple. And if today's color is purple, you need to be in by 9 a.m. to do the drugs. And if you are not, it is considered essentially presumptive positive. You're not able to make it in. So there are a lot of things that I'll share here about it. But just to understand the model, first of all, the drug treatment court model is not invented here. This is a national model that was started in 1985 in Miami. There are now thousands of treatment courts, and the model has been expanded beyond drug courts, the alcohol treatment courts, which we also have here. Some communities have health courts, some have juvenile mental health courts, there are veterans courts. The model is a very good model and very empirically validated. So what we're doing here is based on a playbook that is a national playbook. These are high-risk, high-need offenders. They are screened that way. When people apply for this program, they are given a standardized screening tool, and it is the most highest risk and highest need offenders who are accepted into the program. So, again, it's a national model, and they do quite a good service to the communities. There are 10 key components to how this should work. The fidelity to sticking to those 10 key components really helps to identify if you're going to have success or struggle in implementing a drug court. So I'm going to go over those just briefly. The first is that drug courts integrate alcohol and other drug treatment services with the justice system case processing. Keyword there is integrate. So it's not that one happens to the other. These things are happening simultaneously and influencing one another, having an impact while the person is having this experience going through this, so we can have more impact immediately. 2, using a non-adversarial approach, prosecution and defense counsel promote public safety. The idea is working together. Historically, some have thought of the courtroom as an argument, or there's a winner, there's a loser. This is a team approach, and it's really innovative, and it's really had some great success. Number 3, the participants are identified early. These are our highest risk and highest need folks. They are the highest risk to go out and overdose. They are the highest risk to continue the crimes that have brought them in. So they need to be identified early, and an intervention has to happen very swiftly. Number 4, the drug courts provide a continuum of services, and when treatment, and everyone has treatment as part of the drug treatment court. And what that looks like is driven by national models, is not subjective. It is using standardized screening tools and deciding what people should have in terms of treatment, and a full continuum being available. And if this level is not working, we're going to move up to this level. If that's not working, we'll move up to this level. So that goes all the way from this individual counseling all the way up through a residential setting, inpatient or ambulance settings. 5, abstinence is monitored frequently. As I said, every day they have the opportunity where they may be called in. As people advance through the program and go through what we call the phases, they get assigned different colors. Those colors tend to get called a little less often, but it is still very random, still several times per week. Even in the end stage, it is still several times per week that people are being called in either random urine sample and or breathalyzer. 6, a coordinated strategy governs the drug court. The response to deviations from the rules, there is an incentive and sanction matrix that is used. So essentially, we make sure that people are having the same sorts of consequences as well as the same kinds of incentives. And if this happens, then this would happen. There might be a therapeutic activity required. There could be a sanction in jail for a night or two. Thanks to our deputies for their work in the jail with these folks as well at those times. Number 7, ongoing judicial interaction. This is a drug treatment court, which means that the participants appear in court in front of the judge, prosecutor, defense counsel, others, at least every other week. If they're struggling, they will appear every week. In later phases, they'll drop back to every 3 weeks and 4 weeks. But it's high accountability. They develop a relationship with the judge. Again, this is a team approach. This is working for this person instead of on this person. We want them to know that we have a lot of people who are working together with them to try to help them through this as an alternative to incarceration. There is still some conditional time for the record that is required. However, this is essentially an alternative to that. But again, a minimum of 1 year. Most folks are in this program for 18 to 24 months. Very high accountability. Mandatories of 12-step meetings or other kinds of support group meetings 3 times a week. Very, very intensive program. 8, monitoring, evaluating. We're all about the data. We want to drive us through data. And this is a national model, so we look at what is working and build on that. 9, interdisciplinary education. We bring consultants in to evaluate our court based on the national models. We take the medicine, and it's not always easy to invite people to come in and critique what you're doing, but we do that. We take the medicine that they recommend. 10, forging partnerships. Again, as many of our stakeholders and partners in here, connecting these consumers to as many resources as they have for employment, housing, treatment, support afterwards, all these kinds of things is very important. The more we can develop that, the more success they will have. And in the interest of time, I'll skip our mission statement and move to our eligibility. It must be a Waukesha County resident, must be 17 or older. I'll give you some demographics in just a second, but nonviolent offenders, high risk, high need as measured by a standardized instrument, drug dependent, and screened and approved through the district attorney's office. It is a kind of a group decision-making process on who's going to be accepted. We have had quite a lot of requests for the program, so we have to screen everyone, make sure they're eligible, and they'd be a good fit. As part of this, I've mentioned team several times, just to help you understand what I mean by that. This is a team approach. Before court happens, the team meets and discusses each person who's going to be hearing in court, any person who may be struggling or have something going on that week. And this team is comprised of a judge, an assistant district attorney, a public defender, case manager from Wisconsin Community Services, a probation aide from the Department of Corrections, health and human substance abuse counselor, either Susan Andrews or myself sit in on the staffings to weigh in for the treatment end, and Captain the Sheriff's Department is there. So we have a whole team of people working. What is best, what is needed, making decisions collaboratively. So it's, again, very innovative model. This is probably not going to be seen very well from the back of the room. But essentially this referral process, there's a number of different ways people are referred in, but they are referred to the district attorney's office for screening. They get sent to the WCS case managers to take the standardized instruments to see their eligibility. It's discussed with the staffing team, and then if they are screened in, we get to the bottom here, they enter the court. At that point, they move into the program. If they are unsuccessful, then they will be removed from the program and go back to sentencing. This program is pre-sentencing as opposed to adjudication, so they've been found guilty, but prior to sentencing is when this program works. So if they are successful, however, they may have their charges dropped or reduced as part of that. And again, jail time has been in treatment instead of one of our systems. So this is a phase chart. Don't expect anyone to be able to read these small letters. Basically, there are 4 phases, and they need to hit certain markers to progress through the program. Again, it's a minimum of 1 year, and 18 to 24 months is an average. The outcomes, total, we've served in 6 years 238 clients, and average age is 18 to 25 years. It is demographically a younger group. We have about 3/4 are male. Primary substance of abuse is heroin. Second substance of abuse is opiates. We have a lot of opiates in this program. So this, again, it's been one of our most effective tools in working with the opiate issue. So for additional information about that, you can reach out to Rebecca Luchon or to myself. Happy to talk about it. Also happy to share information about any of the other activities and programs that I mentioned. And I'll be available for questions after this. But to keep within my 10 minutes, let me turn things over to Patrick here. I don't know if we're saving the best for last, perhaps. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
I will be your total drug addict for this morning, speaking to you for recovery. I spoke to Sean this morning, and he wished me luck, and he apologized for not being here, but he said the jet skis and the beach was nice, so. Oh wait, sorry, beach in BC. I wanted to feel really smart, so when I hear people speak, a lot of times they'll start with a quote or a definition. The first definition that came to my mind for today would be the definition of nepotism. Nepotism, the practice among those with power or influence of favoriting relatives or friends, especially by giving them jobs. For the record, I'm not getting paid for this, and I actually had to take PTO to be here, so I'm paying to be here. So I think we can remove the nepotism. I would say it's more like the voluntold. If you're unaware of voluntold means, it means it's the exact opposite of volunteering. So Sean, voluntold means come here to speak here today. Like I said, my name is Patrick Riley. I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'm just lazy. But my name is Patrick Riley. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a taxpayer, I'm a substance abuse counselor, I'm an alcoholic. I'm the Director of Intake and Family Services at the Healing Corner Treatment Center, Brookfield. I chair the Waukesha County AOD Advisory Council. I'm a drug addict. I'm the founder and president of Vida Nova, which is a 501c3 that pays for treatment for people that lose their insurance. So what we're doing is we're bridging that gap. God forbid someone gets into positive action and stops using drugs and alcohol, weird things happen, like they become employed. They keep that employment, and unfortunately, this will push them out of their state-funded insurance, and they become uninsured. In the course of a night, they may lose their therapist, they may lose their medication-assisted treatment. I believe that was right. My board members didn't believe that was right, so we started a nonprofit and we help people bridge that gap. What else am I? I'm a transcontinental self-supported cyclist. I rode my bicycle from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean, 4,267 miles by myself with 4 bags and a tent. That'll come in later. I'm the co-creator and founder of the Don't Die Wisconsin podcast and advocacy movement. The mission there is we're speaking to people that are either in active use or early recovery, and the whole statement is as simple as don't die, we'll figure the rest of it later. And I'm also a state of Wisconsin grant evaluator for the last program that just came in that was awarded to the Wisconsin regions. So I have personal experience, I have a little bit of knowledge, I obviously don't have as much knowledge as some of the people in the room. But my whole purpose here today is probably to inform you that there is hope. Like I said before, I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict. I also, what that means to me is that I have not drank alcohol or used the drugs since May 15, 2009. I personally practice a program of total abstinence, but I need to address to you that that is not the only way. There are many, many ways to recovery. The chief's gone, right? Yeah. I haven't used a drug or drank alcohol in 8+ years, and I still CCAP'd myself before I came here, because those of you know I'm sitting next to the chief of police. That's the way my brain works. That's the way addiction works. I have this disease. I will always have this disease. There is no cure. We treat addiction. We do not cure it. When I wake up tomorrow, I will be an alcoholic and I will be a drug addict. And until I do something for my recovery, it is at stake. Meaning, I need to talk to another alcoholic, I need to do something healthy, but what I'm getting at is every single morning I wake up, I have to hit the reset button. It was the same when I was 3 days sober, it's the same at 8 years sober, it's the same at 27 years sober. I was born in Waukesha. Some of you might have known my father, or if you've been to the Clark Hotel, you definitely know my mother. Those that are laughing definitely know my mother. The reason I bring that up is that I was raised in a home that I wanted for nothing. There was no abuse, there was nothing. Whatever I was a baby, boy, with an Irish Catholic mother, I got whatever I wanted. Okay? The reason I bring that up is because it was stated before that addiction doesn't discriminate. So the same house that produced the mayor of Waukesha, the District 2 Court of Appeals judge, and many, many other high-profile people produced an alcohol and a drug addict. It wasn't my parents' fault. There's nothing they did or didn't do. I was born with it. I believe that. Like, I was an alcoholic and drug addict before I ever put booze or drugs in my body. Okay? The purpose of that is what I hope I convey is that these people that we're talking about, that we've heard about this morning, these people that are overdosing in the city of Waukesha are me. The only reason I am alive today is because I'm 38, not 21. If I was 21 right now, I would be dead. Because when I was using, I used what was in front of me, which was mostly alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, and what else I could get my hands on. Does that make any sense? I use, as an alcoholic drug addict, I use what's in front of me. I'm no different than the 86 people that were brought back from overdose last year. The only difference is I'm just older. I will use whatever you put in front of me. So hopefully, there's a big movement in my community to say, my name is Patrick Riley, I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means to me is that I have not used any mind-altering substances since May 15th of 2009. Okay. I also still need to say that I'm an alcohol and I'm a drug addict. Because hopefully, the next time you hear addict, you think of me versus some made-up person that lives under a bridge in Milwaukee that isn't white and that doesn't play football for Catholic Memorial and win a state championship in 1996. 3 years after I won a state championship, Bill Young was shot twice by cocaine. I was shot twice by cocaine. 3 years after I won a state championship, Bill Young. Those numbers of people. Last time I did this, I started crying because Sean was in guns. So I asked him to go to Washington, D.C. The city of Waukesha, Waukesha County has done amazing, really good work on awareness. We all know what's going on. You read Freeman, you read whatever. We know what's happening in our community and how many people are dying. I would give 5 gold stars to the awareness ability of Waukesha County. If you are not aware of what's going on in our community and the amount of people that are dying, you need to pull your head out of the sand. Forgive me. It's here. Now, we've done the awareness. We've done that. It's great. We will put 1,000 people in a high school gymnasium to hear about how bad the problem is. 2 weeks after that, we have to go in front of the common council and fight for a treatment center. I don't believe that's right. We're all screaming that there's such a big problem, such a big problem, such a big problem. We need to support those that are trying to help them. Okay? Treatment. We have wonderful treatment providers in our community that are doing wonderful things. What we do need to realize is that a prescription of 24 to 32 milligrams of Naloxone for 1 month with no requirement for any behavioral health therapy that is paid in cash is not treatment. I recall my days when I went somewhere and I paid cash and they gave me a substance that made me feel good, that was called drug dealing. I know, because I looked at the MMT list, I believe we have some of our hospital organizations in the room. I would ask you to look at prescribing methods of doctors under your care. Look at PMP. Look at how many Suboxone they're prescribing. Are they requiring treatment? Are they requiring drug screens? The cavalry is not coming. The federal government, the state government is not going to come in here and save us. We need to do this community by community. It's the only way it's going to be done. Nothing against the state government, nothing against the federal government, but if they started doing something, it's going to take a couple of years to get to it. And I will not allow another 100 people to die each year while we wait for someone else to come and save us. All right, we're going to get our hands a little dirty right now when I wrap up. The term harm reduction was brought up before. Okay? For those that are unaware, harm reduction has many different ways and motives. If you put a seatbelt on, that is harm reduction when you drive your vehicle. If you have a designated driver and you go out on your 50th wedding anniversary, you are practicing harm reduction. Clean needle exchanges is harm reduction. Narcan is harm reduction. Okay? Clean needle exchanges decrease the spread of hepatitis C and HIV. They also put into the hands of the street level users Narcan that saves so many lives. The only thing Narcan enables is breathing. The only thing Narcan enables is breathing. Okay? I know my crowd. I know where I am. I know my demographic in this room. A lot of you might not agree with that, and that is okay. But what we need to continue to do is there's an idea that I love that was taught to me by one of my mentors, is that we can both be right and neither of us is wrong. Meaning, let's talk about this. Let's have a discussion about saving lives on the street level. Okay? Like I said, we all have opinions, and unfortunately, some of you have had to listen to mine for the last 10 minutes. I firmly believe that needle exchanges encourage, if you firmly believe that needle exchanges encourage use and or add to the problem, and putting Narcan into people's hands only increases them to continue to use, I would ask you this. Is your opinion more important than someone's life? The answer is yes. Please go to question 2. And question 2 is your opinion more important than that person's sister? An overdose death destroys a family generation. So, if you believe that my disease is a moral family, that's fine. You can believe it all you want. But it's not the moral family of my parents, and it's not the moral family of my wife. The only reason I'm alive today is because I got treatment, and I immersed myself in a community that supports me. And every good thing that's ever happened to me has been a direct result of helping someone else. So, thank you all. I will be more than happy to talk to anyone about the needle exchange, or harm reduction, or Narcan, because I'm coming for you, Waukesha. I am actively pursuing and working with the AIDS Resource Council to provide more services to Waukesha. And I'm going to run into some hurdles, and I know it, but if I can pedal my bike 4,267 miles across the country, when I put my mind to it, I usually accomplish it. So, thank you. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming and ask if there's any questions for any of our panelists before we wrap up. Yes.
I just would like to know the judges for the drug court right now, they rotate.
Yes, it was Judge Lloyd Carter until the first of the year, is now Judge Maria Lazar.
They do rotate, and
They do.
that's what you know.
Yes.
I'd like to thank you for telling us the story and putting the personal touch to this whole thing.
Yeah, thank you very much. One thing I pointed out, it doesn't make any difference if you don't know someone who's a drug addict, it doesn't make any difference if one of your relatives is a drug addict or not. But it does mean that this is a community problem, because when people cannot support their drug habit, where do they go? They go to my car, steal it, they go to break into your home. So this is really kind of, everything else, nothing else about it. It is a community problem that has to be solved.
Any other questions for us? Evan?
I have another question for Chief Howard. How do you differentiate between a heart attack versus diabetes and drug situation?
So again, that triad that this slide talked about, we look for those signs. At the point that someone's also not breathing, we need to start to do CPR, looking at circulation. Then we start to rule things out as a course of treatment. Us delivering Narcan may not be the key factor in successful resuscitation, and maybe then later in the hospital. But generally, when we can recognize or we can't rule out that it was a opiate overdose, then we will try to introduce it to our course of treatment with other things for cardiac arrest, Narcan, and hopefully reverse that.
Does Narcan do any harm to somebody who's having a cardiac arrest?
Generally, no, but there is some side effects. Without getting into the big thing, there are some side effects. So if the shock of putting someone basically in an immediate withdrawal, if they have underlying health conditions, it can trigger something.
So put it into your calendars now.